it seems like my patients really like the stories that make me look like I'm floundering. And so I had one trainer who really had it in for me. He thought I was doing a terrible job. And he said, "You just don't get it." And I said, "Get what?" He said, "How to be a doctor."
Oh,
So
oh.
he was a pessimist. 12 years high school, 4 years undergrad, 4 years med school. Okay, 20 years of education. Now,
Wow.
3 years into residency, and he pontificates like that.
Welcome to the Leadership Disrupted podcast, where we focus on leadership in a world rapidly evolving or devolving, depending on your point of view, where it seems that leading others is more challenging than ever, and leading oneself is also more difficult. I'm your host, Dan Rust, and I know that as a leader, managing your own mental and emotional state is a critical set of skills. And so that's why I'm especially excited about today's guest, Harris Jensen, MD, Doctor of Psychiatry, and author of a new book called Life Skills to Live Your Best Life, a prescription for positivity. Harris, welcome. It is good to see you. I know you and I go back perhaps longer than either one of us wants to really admit, but we go back quite a ways. And when I had a chance to read your book, one of the things that struck me was how important the message is, but how challenging it probably is in today's world. But before we dig into those details, maybe you could just start by just fill in the color commentary that I missed in the introduction. What would you want us to know about you before we dig into the world of managing your mind to be more positive in your outlook?
Well, I grew up in the Midwest in North Dakota. Outwardly, I was moderately successful in grade school, high school, college, but inwardly, I was affected by a dysfunctional family. My mom was depressed, and my dad had alcoholism, also a brain tumor. And so there were a lot of challenges, and I internalized those problems and became very pessimistic. Like I go over in my book, in grade school, I quit piano, saxophone. I quit Cub Scouts because it was too hard. I mean, really? Then at 15, I joined summer camp, uh, and my life turned around. I had a great experience, basically being befriended by the camp director. And I've got video from that actual camp that I visited a month ago up at Lake Metagoshi, just so people know it really happened. And he taught me how to be enthusiastic, to set a plan, take action, uh, keep a lighthearted attitude, and take a lot of pleasure in making a little progress every day. At one point, he said, if you just make a little progress every day, you can succeed at just about anything you put your mind to. And that just blew me away. Like, how could he say that? But he was there when I graduated from college with a communications degree. He was there when I graduated from medical school. And there's a picture of that in my book. And he was there when I graduated with my psychiatry training degree. And then as I worked as a doctor, I found people who were just like me. They doubted they were making any progress. They saw the outside world as just a bunch of fake people taking advantage of other people. They were pessimistic. And at first, I didn't talk about my story, but as I shared some of those stories of how I overcame my pessimism, I got a big response like, wow, that was really helpful, that you can take time to appreciate your accomplishments, and then you can feel more meaning in your life, more purpose. Uh, And if you appreciate the accomplishments of others, then that's going to distinguish your character as well for being a team player. And so I've been a psychiatrist now for 25 years, and I decided, it's time I just put these stories together. And so I wrote Prescription for Positivity, and the first chapter is why you need positivity, and the second is how I learned it. The third is the many benefits, and fourth is meditation, because that's uh, a part of mind control techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And I go over what are the basic principles of optimism. A lot of people miss a few, and then it all falls apart. In chapter 5, I go over how I applied these principles to switch from being a journalist to a medical student. A huge radical shift. But basically, these techniques that I learned from many people allowed me to become a doctor and to practice medicine here for 25 years. So I think these are principles that really work because I'm a living example. And I've taught them to my patients. And so I know they work for other people too. So they can have a sense of meaning and purpose in life. As an employee, so they can be open to feedback. Or as a leader, how they can lead by example. Pessimism is where you doubt yourself, you doubt other people, and that's, in my opinion, the number one thing causing mental illness today. As many as 1 out of 3 people admit to struggling with some kind of severe anxiety or depression. So I think the message of my book is a timely one. Uh,
Well, and
that's my book.
part of the thesis of this podcast is that we live in a world today that is very disrupted from the world that you and I grew up in. The world that you and I grew up in, when as you tell your story, the impact of one adult who consistently shared, positive messaging with you, and the consistent attention from that adult, I think was probably a part of your personal prescription, along with the techniques that he shared. Just the fact that someone engaged with you and cared about you and took the time to help you in today's world, I wonder how common that is with a lot of younger people. And when I say younger, I mean people in their 20s, their 30s. How many of them really do have a mentor who really sees them and cares about them, and then has the wisdom to guide them in the way that you or I might have been guided, decades ago.
I was so lucky. I mean, I didn't organize the book to tell about my story, but as you go through it, you'll see snippets. Oh, uh, here John is taking me on a camping trip to Canada and then to Minnesota. Where'd he get that time? He was a father with a daughter and a wife. Uh, well, he believed in the simple life. Even in North Dakota, he had a small house without a garage. And that's so he could take his summers off and have all these adventures. Uh,
Think
he was
about
burdened
think
by
about the difference in the world now. So you talk about, oh, he took me on a canoe trip to Canada. Most of our modern minds immediately go to, that's kind of suspicious. That's kind
You're right there too. Uh, when I walked around the Lake Metagoshi State Park a month ago, it was beautiful. And I'll be posting videos on Facebook about my walk. But I thought, would this happen today? Well, they probably wouldn't allow a scout professional to be alone one-on-one with a scout.
Mhm.
Furthermore, they wouldn't allow a scout leader to be one-on-one going on trips to Minnesota, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, like there's this paranoia that adults, especially adult men, can't be trusted. And when I tried to volunteer at a local scout troop, uh, yeah, it's $500 a year. You have to go through about 10 hours of online training. It's like you're guilty until you're proven innocent. Yeah, it just takes the blush off the rose.
Yeah.
So there was an innocence in that era. He was a great moral example. And so, but yeah, just my luck. Like
Well, and you can
I was
understand why
incredibly
today.
lucky. I didn't know it.
Yeah. And given everything that has occurred in the last 20, 30 years, you can understand how today, on the one hand, people are rationally more cynical, but imagine growing up in that world, that more cynical world, that more doubtful world, when you suspect first, like it's not trust but verify. It's verify and verify and verify and then maybe trust.
Yeah.
It's
So
a it's a
would that happen today? Would I get invited to work at summer camp? Um, Probably not. And could I be trusted to be away from home around a bunch of other guys and men, and there's nobody keeping an eye on everything? Yeah, I don't know. So
uh, I grew up, at the same time that you grew up, and we, our paths crossed every now and then. And we were both in scouting. We had different paths in scouting, but our paths crossed occasionally.
yeah,
But I also had my experiences with adult men, um, who it was perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable, perfectly healthy, but many of those things I don't think would be allowed to happen today in terms of one-on-one time, alone time, and sometimes it is that individualized attention, that willingness to take the time to show me how to tie a taut line hitch or to show me how to paddle a canoe properly. Um, those things might happen in small group settings now, and of course, it's not the answer to everything, or it's not the reason for everything. But I think it's an interesting touchstone to say that's how it was. This is how it is, and it reflects this different world we live in. And I know in your work as a psychiatrist, you deal with a lot of patients going through their own mental and emotional challenges and dealing with the world, and that also informs your book. So, how do you help a patient who doesn't get it yet? I mean, if they got it, well, then they would already be off, doing whatever, being whatever. So, how do you help somebody transition from being in whatever mindset they're in now to beginning to think about their situation a little more positively?
well, I first ask them, "What are your goals?" And I write that down in my electronic medical record. I want to feel good about myself. I want to have the courage to ask a girl out. Maybe it's a college student. Um, I want to feel like I'm getting somewhere. And okay. Uh, and well, how are you thinking about those things now? So I'm not first saying you got to have a positive attitude. No, I want them to prescribe it for themselves.
Mhm.
The prescription for positivity doesn't come from a doctor, so it comes from you. I had to prescribe it to myself. That makes this book title a little controversial. But so they say, well, I go to college every day and I'm getting B's. Uh, but, so what? Lots of other people get B's. And so there's that comparing themselves with other people. So I said, well, is this making progress on your goal? Let's say you want to become a high school history teacher. Yeah. Well, then that's enough. You don't need to care about other people. Yeah, but I'm never going to make $1 million. You don't need to compare yourself. That's a rabbit hole called the comparing mind. And that's part of pessimism. Like, what? Pessimism is doubting that you matter, that your life is meaningful for no reason, doubting that you're making progress for no reason. No. Oh, uh, I guess I am
You know,
pessimistic.
I wonder how much social media drives that comparing mindset as well. So, you know, a new employee comes into a new role. You know, they come in and they're hired because they're capable to do whatever they're hired to do. But I have leaders who will say to me, "There's just something different." I had one leader say, "There's just something off about most of my newer employees. They don't seem as eager as employees used to be. They quit sooner. If something doesn't go their way, they quit very quickly. If or they have complaints, or they're willing to make quote suggestions much more comfortably. We've been operating a certain way for a long time, and now younger employees, it's not unusual for someone to be hired, and within weeks of being hired, they have suggestions regarding, well, what if we used a different software program, or what if our workflow was different, or what if could I get a slightly different schedule? And this particular leader I was talking to, he said, I can oftentimes see their point of view. Oftentimes they're not technically wrong. I'm just a little put off by how soon and how comfortable they are complaining so quickly. And he said, again, I know that he said, I've got kind of an old school mindset, but they just seem more cynical, and then more quick to quit, more quick to, if something's not going their way, they just move on. And he said, what really surprises me is, in my 20s, I never would have quit a job without having a job to replace it, but they quit. And he said, I think part of it is LinkedIn and some of these other software tools where they can they get fed streams of other jobs that the grass does look perhaps greener on the other side. And so I guess my question, Harris, is for leaders who know that they're hiring people who are being impacted by all of these different forces in the world, this more complicated world. I know it's not a fair question, but any does any guidance come to mind in terms of maybe not specific ways to handle them, but ways to think about them, any ways to be more empathetic with them? Because I know that um, if a young employee's leader is clearly impatient with them, they know it, they sense it, they get it, and then it's just, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to just shut down.
There's a lack of mutual empathy. In America, students are being taught in a very passive way.
Mhm.
And so they never learn mental toughness. They never learn to ignore their feelings and learn something from a setback. So they become emotionally fragile. Um, and I, some of my patients are employers. I'm an employer myself. I have been for 25 years, and I know often the secretary will move on after 5 years. Uh, the pay scale goes up and then it kind of flattens out for everyone's job. Um, and
You
so,
mentioned mental toughness. Is uh, and I know you have some familiarity with education in other countries, other societies. Is there something unique about the American school system that is not building mental toughness or resilience in our students?
cynical theories goes over this idea that in our schools, it's often taught that Western civilization is of no great consequence. And um, here it is, the coddling of the American mind. This is on page XXIX in the preface. And how good intentions and bad ideas are setting up a generation for failure, the coddling of the American mind. So it makes it harder for an employer when uh, students have been coddled, they haven't been challenged. At the same time, they're able to go on social media and compare how they're doing with their high school classmates, etc. Nobody likes to feel like you're missing out. And then as an employer, it can be tough. You feel like you can't give any feedback or they'll quit. Uh,
Mhm.
it's hard to find people who are approachable. So, in my chapter, How I Became High Value, or How to Become High Value, I go over how I achieved being able to receive feedback. Um, and but it all began with Professor Curtis. So, one thing employers can consider is being aware of their attitude and try to tune into what you think might be your employee's attitude, and then give them credit for their accomplishments. That's one of the basic principles of a positive attitude. And what I hear from students is they almost never get that from their teachers. What I hear from employees is they almost never get that from their employer. There's a smile and a nod, and then it's business as usual. I think young people nowadays want to know they're on the right track. If there's a setback, we learned from it. It's not uh, a career ending thing. I think a lot of people will stay with an employer if they feel like they're growing professionally, and they'll know that because the employer says that in specific ways. Hey, I really like how you responded within a day to that software programming problem. Way to go. You can complement the principles of an optimistic attitude. So, initiative. I really like that you showed initiative. And the I shall acronym for positivity represents 6 basic principles. I is for initiative. S is for setbacks, learn from them. Uh, Hopefulness. You know, I'm really happy that you're part of our team here at our business. Uh, you're a ray of sunshine, and I just want to let you know I appreciate that. And
I because of the generation I grew up in, my tendency has been to be very, I'm also kind of an engineer at heart. I mean, I was literally an engineer, in my early career. I tend to think like an engineer, so it's sort of, just the facts, give me the data. Um, and so there was a time when my approach to managing others was set clear expectations, monitor progress, monitor the metrics. When metrics are off, or when someone writes something or creates something, just review it and then give them the facts in terms of what was on track, what was off track. And mostly I would focus on what was off track. And I will give myself credit for having evolved in the last, particularly the post-pandemic world, because I have a lot of employees who are in their 20s now. Some of them, they write video scripts, they write audio scripts, they write e-learning courses or other training programs, and they're very creative people. And one of the wisest things someone shared with me, it's about a decade ago, she said to me, you have to think about what's different about managing creatives, because creative people care a lot about what they do, what they create. When they write a script, to you it's a script. You're looking for a 3-minute video script. You're looking for a 10-minute video script, and you're thinking of it as a script. This is the output of their soul, their mind, even if it's in a very bland topic. And
mhm.
so I over time I've become more and more sensitive. That whole putting yourself truly in the shoes of the other person as a leader, I don't know if it comes naturally to a lot of leaders, because they're used to giving feedback, directing, pushing, prodding. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe I didn't mean to go off on that, but there is something. There is some way that leaders today need to evolve to be more to be more of a mentor, a counselor, a coach, not just a manager of tasks. I don't know if that prompts any thoughts or response.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think to a degree it's always been true, and yet, like you say, the traditional way of teaching people to be leaders is, well, how you were taught. It's the military top-down hierarchy. Here's your job, do it. I'm not here to hold your hand. And as you
So
say, it results in turnover. It doesn't work very well nowadays. People, they'll just go somewhere else. If you're that kind, caring leader who believes in them, maybe more than any other leader has believed in them, they're going to stick with you because they know selfishly they're going to grow. Whatever that means, writing software, writing video, script, they're going to learn more and grow more because somebody's got their back. And what I talk about in my book is in our psyche, and this is true for everybody, me too. There's a push-pull relationship between optimism and pessimism. It's the yin yang in our mind. If you don't give them feedback, hey, I really liked A, B, and C, you're then feeding the pessimism. Wow, I'm working my butt off, and he can't even say anything except here's more to do, or here's what you did wrong. And in my training, I won't say where, I was with 10 other psychiatry residents, and basically we were working our butts off 50 hours a week, and then we were just told what we did wrong. Your write-up's too long. You went up too fast on the medicine. It was minor feedback, but it was all negative. And that's normal, but we didn't know it. And so one Wednesday, we always had a brown bag lunch on Wednesday at noon. I then could talk in private with the 9 other doctors in training. And I said, I don't think things are going very well. What do you mean? I'm just being told what I did wrong. Oh, that happened to me too. It did? Yeah. I'm working really hard, and you can do this better, you can do that better. Wow, like we're all screwing up. Well, like what else are you supposed to believe? I said, maybe this sounds crazy, but I think any day could be our last day, or my last day. So they said, yeah. Well, later that lunch, our training director came in, who was really a great guy. And he said, how's it going? And we could speak in confidence with him, knowing it wouldn't come back to us. But I said, well, I think any day could be our last day. Like in some way, we're really messing up. What do you mean? Well, I was told to fix this in my write-up and this in my note. And he said, you guys are doing great. You're doing as good as any group of 10 doctors. Like you're running this whole wing of the hospital. You're admitting and discharging and treating people just like I would. Really? Like you're not going to fire us? Why would we want to do that? Like, you're doing great. You're misinterpreting things. Well, all we're getting is negative feedback. That's because we believe in you, and we don't think you need the positive feedback because we never got it in our training. Oh, so we're okay. You're more than okay. Like you're doing great. so we're going to graduate. Of course. And I remember walking down the hall, my feet were off the tile floor, and like, okay, I'm going to make it. But this is an example of our innate pessimism. And
Yeah.
uh, if you don't speak to that by giving specific examples of what they're doing right, I like that you did A, B, and C. I like that I can talk to you. I like that you're approachable. I like that we can have a dialogue. It feels good to work with you. If you don't give that kind of feedback, then you're just opening the door to pessimism. And yeah,
And maybe you're
patient.
opening the door to pessimism both for them and for you, because I imagine for some leaders, when they hear you say, oh, you have to find something positive to share about them, and not just one thing, and it's got to be authentic, appreciate their initiative, appreciate the energy they bring, appreciate
Mhm.
whatever it might be. If a leader is finding themselves thinking, oh, please, seriously, I have to baby them, or um, I have to work to think about what are they doing well? Well, maybe that says as much about you as a leader as it does about them. If it's that hard to think of what they're doing right, or if you feel like, well, I shouldn't have to tell them that coming to work every day, on a dependable schedule, that's just part of the job. I shouldn't have to say something positive about that. Um, if you're having such a struggle to say those positive things, maybe that does say something about you as a leader, and how your own mindset needs to evolve to think more positively about these flawed humans, because we're all flawed humans, no
Yeah,
matter what.
we all make mistakes. Um, we're all too hard on ourselves. And yeah, at certain times I'm sure I needed to be told things I already knew. At scout camp, we had to get up and get to breakfast by 7:30. So one day I slept in, and then I woke up with four staff people grabbing my arms and legs, and they threw me in the lake. But uh, I'm here today because John Curtis believed in me, and other people believed in me. So you can cross a line and baby people too much, and then discourage their initiative. Um, and so there's a subtle art to this. And uh, but yeah, if you look around and all you see are the faults, the problems in your employees, then maybe that's your own pessimism kind of coloring things.
So
And
Harris, if you were in your office and your next patient, maybe you have a new patient who, um, his issue is self-doubt around his own leadership capabilities. I talk to a lot of leaders who are just kind of overwhelmed. What they will often, if there's one overarching theme, it's that they will say, look, I still have to deliver results like I always have had to deliver, but the team that I have to deliver the results through, that team is changing, and they want so much more from me. They want me sometimes to be a manager, but sometimes to be a mentor, sometimes to be a coach, sometimes to be a friend, sometimes to be a parent. I don't know that I'm up to the job of being all things to all people, and yet that's the job, as well as deliver results. So
well,
I'm swimming in my own cynicism, my own self-doubt about my ability to lead in this new world. I don't know what might you say to them, or what might you share with them? What thoughts might you bring to the conversation that help them feel a little better about their own capabilities in this tougher world?
well, there's always going to be facts enough to be cynical, pessimistic, nihilistic, and there's always going to be enough facts to justify an optimistic, hopeful, enthusiastic attitude. So don't look at the facts. When you look at your own attitude, ask, what kind of attitude do I want? Now, maybe the facts don't look very good. Maybe production numbers are down. Then face it with a positive attitude. And so in my book, I go over what those elements are. Show initiative, use a day timer and to-do list. View setbacks as temporary. Don't take them personal, try to learn from them. Are you really learning from those setbacks? So in my training, I've told this to a number of patients. It seems like my patients really like the stories that make me look like I'm floundering. And so I had one trainer who really had it in for me. He thought I was doing a terrible job. And he said, "You just don't get it." And I said, "Get what?" He said, "How to be a doctor."
Oh,
So
oh.
he was a pessimist. 12 years high school, 4 years undergrad, 4 years med school. Okay, 20 years of education. Now,
Wow.
3 years into residency, and he pontificates like that. So I went to my training director, but I had become quite pessimistic too. I mean, maybe something's wrong. I asked him what specifically I needed to change, and he couldn't tell me. So it was a crisis of faith. He didn't believe in me, and it was that pessimism was infectious. So, and I had to meet with him every day. This is in Minnesota, and I would eat breakfast and walk through the snow to my car in December, and it was dark. And then I'd drive to the hospital, meet with that supervisor. I got so anxious that I started throwing up. I would throw up every morning when I got to my car. That's how much my nerves were worked up. And so I went to my training director and I said, "What do I need to fix?" And he said, "Well, here, uh, I think you're doing fine." But basically, he took an hour of his time, which is quite significant. And he interviewed, with me watching, he interviewed a new patient who had depression and situational stresses. And then he dictated the note. And then he said, "Is that about what you're doing?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, you're doing great." But that helped me believe in myself.
Mhm.
Uh, he took time to show many, many details of how he does a quality job. And so if there's an employee who's kind of imploding, maybe show that employee how you do it, and sit with them shoulder to shoulder so they can see all the nuances, all the different ways you do what you do. Um, and I thought I
Uh,
had my problems. I was facing them. And then about 6 months later, I was talking with a fellow resident, and we were going to graduate in a month or two. And he said, "Did you hear about our supervisor?" "No, his leukemia came back." "What?"
oh.
So that could be a death sentence. I don't know what happened to him in the end, but obviously he had bigger problems than me, right? Uh, but he took the time, um, and he was hopeful. This will help with whatever isn't working with that supervisor. And what wasn't working was I was insecure. I was hemming and hawing.
Mhm.
And here my training director was confident. He asked the questions with the patient. He wrote the prescriptions. He dictated the note with a confident, decisive attitude. And I saw, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm like tentative when I talk to my supervisor. So I mentioned that to my training director, and he said, well, let me tell you what I did to learn confident presentation skills. I wrote down what I'm going to say, and then I spoke those words to myself looking in a mirror. And so now you can coach yourself. Let's have confident facial expressions, confident posture, confident gestures. And so he said, practice that, and I'll bet things get better. And they did.
Well, I think that there are so many lessons in that story. That we sometimes underestimate as leaders the butterfly effect of our small actions, either negative or positive. Sometimes as a leader, just not responding or not engaging. When someone sees you having coffee or a laugh with one employee, and you don't have that same kind of coffee or laugh with them, you may mean absolutely nothing by it, but that smallest slight, that sense that, oh, you see them, you connect with them, apparently not with me, that can have an effect on an employee. Or you can dial that up to even, you give a suggestion, you give a correction, and just delivering a fact-based correction that you as the leader may think, I'm not being rude, I'm not being harsh, I'm just delivering the facts. Well, sometimes just the facts, what feels to you like a little pebble is actually a boulder to that employee, because it's the leader who's delivering it. And so that butterfly effect can be negative or it can be positive, because sometimes just the ever so slightest, hey, how are you doing today? Like, seriously, how are you doing? Or you seem a little off today. What's going on? And then actually having the conversation. Or how are you doing? I know you're working on a tough project that's taking up a lot of your mental energy. How's it going? And then how are you doing? Not just how's the project going, but how are you doing? Those little things, I know they can fill people up. But sometimes as leaders, we forget that the best way to help our employees become more positive is to model those positive behaviors, to model that positivity. And I think that's another reason to read your book, is to understand that as a leader, I'm not just leading myself. Yes, I could be leading myself and be more positive for my own sake, for my own mind, but also then I become a better model for the people around me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that self-disclosure, giving to others what you want them to give to you, uh, that that was there with Professor Curtis. He was so happy to be on that little bird watching hike,
Mhm.
and he was so happy to interact with me, to see me learning. Um, it that attitude shines through. So some Monday mornings, I'll talk with my secretary, who's been doing a great job now for about 5 years, and I'll mention something painful. Um, uh, maybe, well, on the book signing tour to North Dakota, uh, I said, well, it went pretty good. I had an event in Grand Forks and in Minot, but actually, I asked if I could be interviewed by the Minot Daily News. I was rejected.
No.
People, yeah. Right. I actually talked to the editor, and she said, "Go talk to the advertising department. Like, you're just trying to sell books." The radio station and TV station were invited to my talk. They never showed up. Uh,
Okay, so for
okay.
people who aren't familiar with Minot, North Dakota, Minot, North Dakota is a small town of about maybe 30,000 people. Minot Daily News, no offense if you're from the Minot Daily News and you're watching this now, but no offense, but on any given week, it's not like there are these huge news stories that, oh my God, I'm sorry, Harris, we can't interview an author who grew up in our hometown and has written and published a book. We can't interview you because we've got these 8 other huge stories. It's just, man, that's
Yeah.
but that's got to hurt. I mean, that's got to feel like that's pretty personal in terms of rejection, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I thought I had a great message. I'm just trying to show how traditional Midwestern values helped my life
Uh-huh.
in so many ways. Like Minot is a great place, and the newspaper as sort of its flagship is a great place. And yep, that's okay. I was sharing that with my secretary, uh, just so she knows I have bad times too.
Yeah.
And sometimes she'll share with me she's frustrated with insurance companies or some pharmacy isn't filling a prescription correctly. But why does she open up to me? Because I opened up to her. Uh, and I'm not coming across like I got it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she appreciates that. I'm relatable. Uh,
That's tough for leaders when, self-disclosure, uh, being vulnerable. It's something that I hear. I mean, I hear from employees who say, I wish we'll talk about leaders that they really resonate with and others that not so much. And usually it's those rare leaders who will disclose their own vulnerabilities, who will disclose their own, less than positive experiences, their own challenges, because they humanize themselves. And I wonder why the majority of leaders are uncomfortable humanizing themselves. Um, it feels like they're very comfortable with the bubble around them. They're very comfortable with sort of the authority or the sense of like impervious competence. I'm highly competent. That's why I'm in the position that I'm in. And yet it creates a barrier between them and their employees. And I think they underestimate the damage that barrier causes, because if employees don't view you as a model, if they don't view you as someone whose behavior they want to model, I don't think you end up having much influence over them.
right. There isn't that connection.
So
And
when people have read your book, I
you can
imagine you've had people come back and share their positive experiences or like what's changed in their minds. What are some of the common things that you hear from readers of your book, where they say, "Oh, here is how my perspective shifted based upon reading your book"?
well, one fellow is a manager of a restaurant, and he's had to deal with these same employee issues. He has about 40 or 50 employees at his steakhouse, and business has been down recently with the economy. But he said, I just do my part. And then at the end of the day, I spend quality time with my family. He doesn't overthink, and that helps him keep his restaurant going. Um,
Mhm.
for listeners who sometimes might fly into Denver International Airport on the B concourse, there's been a lot of major developments, in part through one of my patients. I talk about her in the book, and she has to boss men around. And that started when she was about 24. But she used daytimers, to do lists, and confident nonverbal communication. And she learned that from me after she almost quit college as a sophomore. But now she's telling people how to install chairs and lighting and different things. Um, and she got promoted. So I asked, how did that happen? Well, my boss saw me, following through, being punctual, using the day timer to-do list. He said, you're better organized than me. So I thought, I'd just give you this job. Uh, and obviously that's hard, directing a lot of people and constructing a wing on an airport.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, one fellow, he worked at a computer chip manufacturing facility in the area and went through a breakup. And that was really hard. But we talked about uh, what did you learn from that setback? And every new patient gets a copy of my book. And uh, he said, I don't know. I said, well, was there a disconnect? Yeah, she didn't talk about her feelings. She would just blow them off and then she dumped me. Maybe that's a flag that she has an avoidant attachment style, and you need to find somebody who is comfortable feeling close with you. And now he's in another relationship with a woman who already has a 3 or 4 year old son, and it's going good, but he knew what to look for. He learned from his setbacks. So those are a couple examples from people who learn skills, and as they just keep at it, they're creating more accomplishments in their life without letting the pessimism just
Yeah.
drag it down. Uh,
So Harris, as I think back to this last 60 minutes, the one thing that you said that really struck me is you said you can take any life situation and you can find the facts that will support a cynical conclusion, and you can find the facts that will support an optimistic conclusion, whatever your life circumstances might be.
mhm.
There will be a fact-based reason to go either way. So decide what point of view serves you, decide what point of view will get you the outcome that you want. And if you decide, I am going to find, there's the old story of the optimistic boy. He's somebody finds him in a farmyard, digging through a pile of manure, and he's slinging manure, and somebody says, why are you digging through this pile of manure? And he says, I know there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. So, one way or another, he has decided that he's going to find a pony. And I think if you decide, what I'm taking from that comment from you is, if you decide that you are going to find a positive, productive way to look at this and a way to deal with this, you'll find that answer. It may be hard. It's going to be harder in some situations than others. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. So the situations where it has the most value are probably the situations where most people would look at this and just say, just give up. Come on, that is nothing but bad. But the person who can take that nothing but bad situation and say, I know there's a pony in here somewhere, and find the pony in the manure, that's that rare individual who really creates their life. Absolutely.
Mhm. You
And
can
I would
only
say,
find solutions if you're looking for them.
yeah,
You can only feel hopeful if you're looking for it. We have 4 million times more connections in our brain than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Uh, we are far more competent and capable to be a good leader than we give ourselves credit for. Um, and so how do we learn? Uh, well, through podcasts and books and talking with people and personal reflection. But that's what made this country great. We're inventive. We're resourceful.
well, and I think that the same attitude can be applied to the decision whether or not to read your book, because you can find facts to say, wouldn't be for me because of ABC. it can you decide that, and you can absolutely go down that path. The same is true if you say to yourself, what's the value of one good idea? What's the value of one slight change in one's perspective? You can find the facts to take you in the other direction as well. And so I appreciate that you've taken a lifetime of experiences, a lifetime of, challenges, as well as good things that have happened with you and for you, and you've synthesized those down into a very practically workable book that I think any leader could read it with two minds. Any leader could read it with, number one, the mindset of just for me, just helping me be more positive, but also help me understand how to help my people be more positive, how to help act as a model and a guide so that my leadership butterfly effect has more of a positive impact on them. Any last thoughts you'd want to share with us? This has been great.
Well, if you grew up in North Dakota and then you come off like you're promoting something you wrote, that's selfish. That's
Uncomfortable.
awful. So, but yeah, these are the things that got me where I am today, and there were many setbacks. Dad falling on his face drunk in the front yard, him having affairs on my mom, the divorce, Dad's brain tumor. I had all kinds of setbacks. After my first 2 years of med school, I flunked my national board exam, but I passed it the second time. So, but why did I do that? Because I worked on my attitude, and it's all these life skills. So that these are the life skills. I could have called the book Life Skills for Success, but I chose Prescription for Positivity. And so the good life is the life where you're working on your life skills. And well, Dan, it's really great to see you again, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Very, very, I mean, the appreciation is mutual. We'll wrap up now. And for those of you, if you've gotten value out of this, number one, look at the podcast notes, and you'll see the link to Harris's book as he's sharing right there. And also hit the subscribe button and the like button. That'll certainly help us as we continue to promote the podcast. But this was fantastic. Harris, thank you. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. Bye now.